India must go ahead and extradite Sheikh Hasina. Remember that the former Bangladesh Prime Minister is currently based in Delhi at an unknown location. And it's based on that Dhaka has now issued a statement citing the extradition treaty and pushing for India to hand over Sheikh Hasina. Now, so far, the MEA has issued a statement. While they haven't responded to what Bangladesh has said, they've taken note of the death sentence, the death penalty for Sheikh Hasina. And here's what the MEA has said. As a close neighbor, India remains committed to the best interests of the people of Bangladesh, including in peace, democracy, inclusion and stability. We will always engage constructively with all stakeholders to that end. So that is the only statement that's come in so far from India. I want to bring in our Foreign Affairs Editor, Geeta Mohan. Also with us is Indrajit Kundu, who's been tracking all the updates on this. Geeta, I'd like to begin with you on really what this means. The fact that we have an extradition treaty between India and Bangladesh, does that mean India is now obligated to hand over Sheikh Hasina?
Well, there is an extradition treaty, yes. There will be the Bangladeshi administration will look at the obligatory angle to the treaty. But for now, this is also a political leader who fled the country in a very, very difficult time. And also the violence that followed the protests is something that, both sides, whether it's Awami League or for that matter, the Yunus regime have been questioning in terms of intent, who was involved, how did all this happen? So for India, it is a very, very sensitive issue, and therefore you can see, Akshita, the statement is also very carefully drafted. They're not committing to an extradition. They're also not committing to not engaging stakeholders, which include the current regime in Bangladesh. Having said that, Sheikh Hasina has already said that they're an unelected government, and this is not this is a biased trial, and it was not fair. It was not done fairly. So the Indian administration has a few options. One is that they can engage Bangladesh, they can engage Dhaka on ensuring that there is no death sentence. Else, sending her would mean India would be losing Bangladesh completely, because BNP pro-Pakistan, Jamaat-e-Islami pro-Pakistan, and Awami League that has always been a friend of India. India will lose all stakes in Bangladesh should they decide to send Sheikh Hasina, who has a death sentence or death penalty against her in Dhaka. The other option that the Indian administration was considering in the past, according to sources, reports that we've seen, was getting her to a third country that does not have an extradition treaty with Bangladesh, has influence over Bangladesh, and may not be very akin to sending or repatriating her to Dhaka. So that's another option. But for now, it doesn't seem like India is going to extradite Sheikh Hasina anytime soon. We'll have to wait and see how the diplomacy plays out over here.
Okay, thanks, Geeta, for those details. I'll bring in Indrajit Kundu also for more on this. Indrajit, in the face of it, from what Geeta tells us, an extradition treaty doesn't immediately, equal Hasina's handover, or the fact that she will immediately be moved back to Bangladesh. So in such a circumstance, what really is the Yunus government planning to do?
Well, this is as much playing to the political gallery. Remember, Sheikh Hasina remains a sore thumb as far as Indo-Bangladesh relationship at this point in time is concerned. For the Yunus government, given the prevailing situation on the ground, the sentiments on the ground, it doesn't have much of an option but to continuously remind India that Sheikh Hasina is a political fugitive, that she has now been indicted by a sovereign court in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a sovereign country, and therefore law must take its own course. But the issue here, of course, is that even though India and Bangladesh does have an extradition treaty, what is Sheikh Hasina's status in India? Is she on a political asylum? That's not very clear. Indian government hasn't clarified that in the past 1 year since Sheikh Hasina was given shelter here. Is it a temporary shelter? Is it an official political asylum? These are things that will have to be, spoken out. The statement crafted by the Ministry of External Affairs is very, very cautious. It calls about, friendly relationships with Bangladesh. One really doesn't have much of an option beyond that, it seems. And therefore, the Indian establishment is looking at the flux in Bangladesh very, very closely. within 2 to 3 months' time, in February next year, Bangladesh is supposed to have a general election at that point in time. So in that backdrop, where the Awami League clearly is not going to be able to participate because they have been banned, so India will have to, take every step very, very carefully.
All right, thanks Indrajit for getting us all of those details. Let's put the focus now, what happens next? Sheikh Hasina, of course, has been awarded the death sentence for, in fact, her role. And this is based on a tribunal that was set up to look into what happened in 2024 that ultimately led to her ouster. Bangladesh could push for extradition through treaty. They've already issued a statement to that effect, but they could then tell India that, look, because we have an extradition treaty between India and Bangladesh, you have to hand her over. But ultimately, it's the Indian government that can take a call on Hasina's extradition. It's not mandatory for Sheikh Hasina to be handed over. And one of the top issues that will be raised is that the decision has been taken by an unelected regime. That, in a way, could be a protective factor for Sheikh Hasina. She could choose to and remain in Delhi because of the fact that the government, the Indian government, could say, look, we don't have to abide by this decision because an unelected regime is currently in Bangladesh. So Sheikh Hasina remains safe as long as she stays outside Bangladesh. If she's extradited by any course that happens, then she will face the death sentence that's been handed to her. And so her game plan is going to be simple, to ensure that no matter what, she stays put in the national capital or perhaps goes to some other country where there's no extradition treaty with Bangladesh. Let's run you through what's happened in the last few hours. This is the International Crimes Tribunal that sentenced Sheikh Hasina to death. Now, they've said this is for crimes against humanity over her government's rather violent crackdown on student-led protests last year. The court held that Hasina knew about the firing on students and used legal weapons against protesters, calling it a grave violation of human rights. Now, right after this, Sheikh Hasina, speaking to India Today, said this was a rigged verdict. Let's get you all of those details.
Dhaka is erupting again. Streets packed with protesters, police in full gear, and a capital bracing for unrest. Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal on Monday sentenced Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death for the crackdown she ordered on student protesters in 2024 that led to the loss of many lives. As the verdict was read out, the courtroom erupted with claps, cheers. The tribunal found Hasina guilty of crimes against humanity, including conspiracy to commit mass killings. The tribunal held that the former Prime Minister knowingly authorized a brutal state crackdown. The court ordered death sentence on the charge of Hasina ordering to kill protesters and on the charge of Hasina's failure to prevent atrocities.
She committed the same crime, that is the crime against humanity, on another count for causing the killings at Ashulia of Sabar, killing of 6 persons. For all these 3 counts, we have decided to inflict her with only one sentence, that is sentence of death.
And while the courtroom celebrated, outside members of her party, Awami League, took to the streets, protesting the judgment, calling it judicial assassination and warning of a dark precedent. With tensions climbing, Dhaka is now under an unprecedented security blanket. Sheikh Hasina is currently in India, where she has taken asylum, at a time when her country finds itself at crossroads. Reacting to the verdict, oust Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina called the ruling biased, politically motivated and issued by a rigged tribunal with no democratic mandate. The Awami League will not be allowed to participate as they are barred from any kind of elections. A death sentence handed down, a party barred, a nation unsettled. Bangladesh's political future now hangs in the balance. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, what exactly are the charges against Sheikh Hasina? Why has she been convicted and even sentenced to death? At the heart of it is the anti-quota student protest that had rocked Bangladesh in June and July of 2024 that ultimately led to her ouster as Bangladesh Prime Minister. She's today regretted her mishandling of the student protest and inability to gauge their mood. But she also maintains, like I said, that the verdict is uncalled for the death penalty to be issued against her. She's also said that attempts are being made to end her political party. Let's break down for you in our next report exactly what led to Sheikh Hasina's trial and conviction.
"78-year-old Sheikh Hasina Wajid is once again in India. In her second exile, she is a fugitive convicted in absentia to death by a court in Dhaka for crimes against humanity. The ousted Prime Minister of Bangladesh has been barred from contesting. Her party, Awami League, is banned under Anti-Terrorism Act. Night before the verdict, in an audio message to her supporters, Sheikh Hasina has already rubbished all charges brought against her.
আপনারা জানেন যে সেই কোর্টে চিফ প্রসিকিউটর আমার বিরুদ্ধে যে সমস্ত অভিযোগ এনেছে তা সবই তো মিথ্যা। একটা কোর্টে দাঁড়িয়ে কেউ যদি মিথ্যা অভিযোগ দেয় তা তার বিরুদ্ধে কিন্তু মামলা হয় এবং একসময় হবে। তবে এই কোর্টটাও তো অবৈধ, কারণ 1973 সালে পার্লামেন্টে আইন পাশ করে যুদ্ধ অপরাধীদের বিচারের জন্য এটা করা হয়েছিল।
In June 2024, students of Bangladesh erupted in protest against the Supreme Court of Bangladesh's decision to reinstate the 30% reservation quota for descendants of freedom fighters. This reversed the earlier government decision to remove this reservation in response to the quota reform movement of 2018. When students refused to back down, Sheikh Hasina, in one of her public addresses, accused them as Razakar descendants. The use of the most hated word in Bangladesh, Razakar, meaning those who helped the perpetrators against the freedom fighters during Bangladesh's Mukti Juddho, made students' protest grow in intensity. If the grandchildren of Mukti Jodha can't qualify for reservation, is it to be given to Razakars? Hasina's government allegedly let police and security forces violently crack down on protest, leading to the death and imprisonment of hundreds. The death of the 25-year-old Abu Said from Rokeya University in Rangpur became a symbol of the protest as he stood in defiance, spreading his hands, inviting police to open fire on him. He was shot at and declared brought dead in the hospital. The student protest became anti-Hasina and aimed at ousting her from power.
Here the most sensitive thing is the matter of the students. We must make sure that they won't get harmed. We have tried by the efforts of our police and all our forces. When arson started, the protesting students said they were not involved in it, and we condemn it. We don't want it. When they pulled off from the protest, I deployed the army. Only then did I deploy them. I did not do it before that, before the students pulled off from the protest. Many accuse me of deploying army against the students. I myself was involved in student politics. My politics started from Dhaka University. I know what the army could do. Shabir, the student wing of the Jamaat-e-Islam, BNP, and Jamaat together are behind all these incidents and murders.
Dhaka turned into a battleground. And finally, on 5th August 2024, Sheikh Hasina had to flee Dhaka and seek refuge in India. When asked if she wants to do things differently in a text interview to India Today from an undisclosed location, the exiled and now convicted Bangladesh Prime Minister did agree that she failed to read the emotions of the students. She said, and I quote, "Every leader with the benefit of hindsight can identify decisions they might have approached differently. Looking back, I recognize that certain grievances, particularly around government job quotas, could have been addressed through more extensive dialogue and engagement. We had mechanisms in place for this. As we had shown in the past, but perhaps we could have acted more swiftly. If the situation had not deteriorated, we would also have been able to complete the independent inquiry we launched immediately after the first casualties. This was extinguished by Yunus when he seized power. But I regret that we were not able to give the bereaved families of those who tragically lost their lives the answer they deserve. Sadly, the so-called investigations that have been undertaken by the interim government have just been scapegoating exercises aimed at discrediting the Awami League for narrow political purposes." Unquote. Sheikh Hasina was once celebrated as the torchbearer of democracy in Bangladesh. But her 15 years as the Prime Minister has been tarnished with the blood of innocent students, and the septuagenarian leader stands at the worst crossroad of her life today. With everything that she, her father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, her party Awami League had built since Bangladesh was formed, is now being dabbed in black by her fellow countrymen, to be marked out in Bangladesh's history as the darkest of all. Bureau Report, India Today.
Heartbreaking tragedy that was reported today of Umrah pilgrims, almost 42 Indians perishing in a massive bus fire that had taken place, and 18 members of a single household of one family have perished in this tragedy. Essentially 3 generations that have been lost in this tragedy. You see the picture on your screens. There are toddlers, children, senior citizens, all belonging to one family, 18 of them, who have died in this unfortunate incident that has taken place. They all belonged to Hyderabad. You can only imagine the pain, the grief that the rest of the family members are going through right now. But this is horrifying, really, truly, and difficult really to wrap your head around the fact that 18 members of a family have perished in this tragedy.
कुल मिला के 18 लोग हैं, उसमें हम चाहते हैं कि ये इसमें कम से कम गवर्नमेंट से ये गुजारिश है कि हमको ये इस पर फुल इंक्वायरी होना चाहिए। उसमें क्या हादसा हुआ, ये क्या हुआ, ये हमको तो पता नहीं, मगर ये एजेंसी, ट्रैवल एजेंसी जो भी है उस पर इंक्वायरी होना चाहिए और सक्सेसर उनको सज़ा मिलना चाहिए।
3 generations wiped out just like that. Among the 40 plus people, Indians who've died in this tragedy, 18 members of one family. Apurva Jayachandran is joining us with more details on this. Apurva, this is as heartbreaking as it gets. We've been speaking to so many families who've lost their loved ones in what was supposed to be a memorable holy trip.
Well, that's right, Akshita. In fact, it's a very tragic event that took place earlier this morning. In fact, the families of the victims whom we had spoken here to early this morning as well, they said they were shocked to hear that this accident of such a vast gravity had taken place. They said that they had just spoken with their loved ones late last night who had been very happy that they had finished their Umrah pilgrimage and that they were scheduled to also return back to Hyderabad by next week after traveling, to Medina from Mecca and having a trip there as well. And unfortunately, so many people have lost their lives in this accident as well. We are getting to learn that one particular family here in Hyderabad, 18 people have lost their lives, including young ones as well, while from several other areas as well, 4 to 5 people from a family each have lost their lives in this tragic accident. In fact, the Telangana state government has already announced an ex gratia of rupees 5 lakhs to the families of the victims who have died in this tragic accident. We are getting to learn that several people are still receiving treatment in the hospitals there in Saudi, but the Telangana government has arranged for special nodal officers who will be traveling to Saudi Arabia, who will be traveling there to take stock of the situation on ground. And not only that, top leaders from the Telangana Congress government will be going there and looking into the relief and rescue measures and ensure that the bodies of those who have lost their lives in this tragic accident or those who have, who are getting treatment, they be transferred and returned back safely to India and Hyderabad at the earliest.
All steps being taken by the state government to help these families in this time of grief. Thanks, Apurva, for those details. Again, let me highlight that picture you see on your screens, 18 members of one family, all have died in that trip. All Umrah pilgrims, little children, men, women, senior citizens, all perished in that tragedy. That's all we have time for in this edition of Super 6. Thanks very much for tuning in. Coming up on the other side is my colleague Nikhil Nas with the Sports Special.